Hello, ladies, gentlemen, non-binary friends, and welcome here to the first week of the Risen Divine League podcast. My name is Joker, and I've got the JuiceBoxGuy alongside me here for this one, as we're gonna break down last week's matches here, get you ready for next week's matches. And as you can see right up above, we've got ourselves a very special guest this week. Joining us to talk about his team later on here today is Nano, the head coach of Conviction, fresh off of spoilers, their 2-0 victory last week as they took on, I believe that was Aquinas Esports, excuse me, Aquinas Esports. So first off, again, congratulations on that. Welcome. And anything you want to say before we start to run down the matches from last week?
Me? Or
yeah. Oh yeah, you baby.
Yeah.
It's on you. Anything that I'd like to say?
Yeah. At least any shout outs or anything before we get into the matchups.
I do want to, of course, shout out the team. Sticking out there. Sticking with it. Even through some of the harder games, but we're out here. I do think that some of the matches for our team, like the results of the matches, were pretty surprising. We had actually a pretty good. We thought Mad City, World Class Esports, and Dark Pulse were pretty good, and all of them actually lost. So I think this is probably something that's going to be pretty interesting, so far. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. But before we get into those matches, Joker, you want to go ahead and get a rundown of all the games that took place this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 9 of our 10 matches completed. We are waiting on the last match, which is Akuma Halberds taking on Omega Gaming Silence. They had to reschedule that, so that's going to happen here in week number 2. But we can go ahead and run down our week number 1 matchups. First, it was the Manitoba Bisons taking on World Class Esports, and as we just heard, Manitoba coming up 2-0 over a World Class. Kind of a surprising finish to that one, but Manitoba taking that win early on. And as well, they're in Division 1. The IU Hoosiers took on Dark Pulse and took them down 2-0 to start off their campaign here in the Risen Divine League. Moving on to Division 2, we saw Aqualix Esports taking on the Striking Vipers, and Aqualix took that one 2-0 as well. Our first 2-1 of the season was actually streamed on the Excellency Twitch page. It was Mad City Outlaws taking on Glaive Amethyst in a fun series. Juicebox, you were on the analyst desk for that. I was casting that with Axeman, and it was Glaive taking it 2-1 over Mad in the reverse sweep, so to speak. Moving on to Division 3, streaming on the Risen Twitch page, it was Soulbound Mirage taking on Glacial Esports. Soulbound Mirage taking that one in a 2-0. The other matchup there in Division 3 was the Akuma Claymores taking on Lost Collectives, and the Claymores actually took that one in another 2-1 fashion. Moving on finally to our last matchup that has finished so far here in Division 4, it was Conviction taking on Aquinas Esports, as we said, and Conviction, coming out with the 2-0 victory. So we have 9 of our 10 matches completed. We have the basis of what we think could be a power rankings, and I know that was something you definitely wanted to touch on, Juicebox.
Yeah, and we're certainly going to get into that as we get through after we get through, I should say, our analysis portion of everything. But let's not jump ahead of ourselves here. So first thing I want to do is let's go revisit each one of these matches, and hit on all the ones that were off stream as well as some of the ones that were on stream, and we can kind of update any fans of the Risen Divine League on these games, so that they can get a clearer picture of what the whole scene looks like versus just the two that were on stream. And so the first matchup, we are going to go top to bottom here. Manitoba Bisons versus World Class Esports. Now, Nano, I know you actually had some thoughts on World Class Esports, who did go 0-2 here. Before I get into my, my back-breaking, my skull-cracking analysis here, let me just hear what you think about these guys.
Yeah, so kind of looking at World Class, they were the first team that I recognized going into the tournament. I think a lot of their players were like just solo queue wise were high ranked last season, um, or just like or before in general. I think as individual players, they should be one of the best teams in this tournament for sure. So I don't know what happened with them. Like the immediate like when I looked at all the rosters at the beginning, right?
Right.
The first teams that popped into my eyes were World Class and Aquatics, right? In general, right? I was like, okay, the teams that we're going to be competing with are World Class and Aquatics, and then like possibly some of these other teams, could do pretty well. But it's actually pretty surprising that they didn't do too well in their first match at least.
Yeah, no, definitely. And let's go ahead. Let's hop into that match up. So, just a real quick rundown of the rosters here. So, Manitoba Bisons had Tiger Clown. Kept one was in the mid lane. I can't. Captain Snartles, I think, was the jungler. Aldous was the AD carry for them, and Justin was Manitoba's support. Looking over at World Class, Falling was the top laner. Roll Swap in the jungle. Big Brain Diff coming through in the mid lane, and Where's Osama plus his support Fly coming through in the bottom side here. And yeah, expectations were kind of blown out of the water here in my pregame or preseason power rankings that no one ever saw. Thank God. I had them ranked really highly, and
Mhm.
things they flipped the script on me for this one. They really came up short, in my opinion. And let's just go ahead get straight into this first game. It lasted just shy of 26 minutes, and it was 37 kills from the Manitoba Bisons to the 13 kills of the World Class Esports organization. And to me, just looking, irregardless of the macro and the micro and what exactly took place, just looking out at it from that high of an angle, it's still absolutely shocking to see a renowned team like World Class get utterly detonated on by a squad like the Manitoba Bisons.
Yeah. Okay. And like I think I'm in the field that it was probably just an off series or something happened, and they'll probably be able to bounce back as the group stage kind of continues. But definitely
All
not
right.
the best sign.
Right. No, definitely bad off the top. And Joker, let me ask you this. What is your opinion on World Class's Soraka that they brought up in the top lane to face off against the Kale?
I mean, Soraka top used to be a pretty strong laner. She did get some nerfs in some recent patches to try to bring that solo lane presence down and bring her back into the support role. And typically, you want to bring a Soraka into a melee matchup, something that doesn't have a lot of wave clear, doesn't have really the potential to try to dive on her, so that she could just continue to harass with her Q and her E, excuse me, and just be able to just continue to rain down her ass and heal herself very easily and have no issues. The problem is that Kale starts off as melee, but then level 6 becomes ranged, and then it becomes so much harder to try to do anything against her, and the Soraka becomes basically useless. She just
Right.
doesn't deal enough damage. She doesn't really provide. She provides the healing, but when you can get shut down by a Kale in lane pretty easily at 6, think about this: your Kale 6 is a combat ultimate. You can use it in fights to either extend the fights, continue to try to put in some damage, make tower dives happen. Soraka 6, it's a utility 6. It's a safety ultimate. It's not going to really turn a fight. It's not going to provide any extra damage. May allow you to stay alive a few more seconds, but that's about it. And the Kale Kale is going to run over Soraka once you hit 6, and unfortunately that's just the way that lane goes, and that's why Soraka really isn't picked in a solo lane anymore. You still see her at support for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And Soraka definitely did not work out in the first game, 1-5-7. But taking a quick look at game 2 before we move on to the next series, this is what I like to call the Kassadin game from when I was watching it. Kept one, got himself Kassadin for the second game, went 16-0-5 in that game, picked up 2 quadra kills for himself. And I think that's outrageous. And if it'd be one thing if Kept One was the only big threat coming through for the Manitoba Bisons. Alidus in that 80 carry role was also a terror to be reckoned with. Kept One, total KDA, 25-0 and 19 between his two games. Alidus, sorry, in the second or throughout the series went 15-4 and 26. So I look at these two carry players and I look at this squad, and I think that they are actually going to be one of the best teams. And you know what? If World Class is a really, really good organization and they're going to pick it up, I definitely think that there are mistakes that did come through. This first week was pretty jolting. I mean, they looked in over their heads. The synergy was off. Fly as the support did very poorly for himself. And yeah, I'd want to see better stuff coming out of World Class Esports. And I know they can do it. We all know they can do it, but it's time to execute on that. So what was the second series? Let's go ahead. Let's move on to game 2 in the second.
That would be
teams,
Dark
yeah.
Pulse and the IU Hoosiers, Indiana University.
Right, and that was the one where Indiana actually went 2-0 on Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse, it's kind of funny that we talk about the first game because this one was kind of similar. The same basic thing sort of happened. There was one big difference between how these games kind of played out, which was the game times. Indiana University went up 2-0, right? But they really relied on their scaling compositions to just eventually catch up and roll over the enemy oppositions. And Dark Pulse didn't really try to punish them early on in either of their games because they used scaling comps twice. And both games, once Indiana University got to that point, they just completely detonated on Dark Pulse and wrapped these games up a lot sooner than later. So, Nano, I actually want to get your thoughts on this. So when you look at a scaling comp, what are some things that you do to try to fight against that?
Well, you can kind of look at scaling in two different ways, right? Okay. If you're playing against it. And the main way that a lot of people in the current meta, right, look at it is, okay, they're scaling, which means I'm able to gain an advantage in the early game, right, by picking some sort of early game team comp or whatever, right?
Right.
And then another one is, okay, we can just match the scaling, right? But for me, when I'm drafting against scaling just in general, weirdly enough, I think picking mid game is a lot better into scaling than actually picking a hard early game team comp, right? And the reason for that is a lot of mid game team comps are strong enough in the early game to kind of push away a scaling comp anyway, and they're not going to be run over fast enough, or they don't have as much of a timer to to fall apart the same way like a Pantheon, kind of hard aggro team comp would, fall apart, right? So I think if a team's winning a lot with scaling, they probably have pretty fine fundamentals just in general, but
yeah.
I think it's definitely beatable with the right team comp and team, for sure.
That's actually super interesting to me because 9 times out of 10 when teams say when teams are asking what beats hard scaling, most people are just going to go, yeah, it's going to be the early game. You smash them in early game, you don't let up on them, and they can't scale. But to hear somebody else agree and say, hey, no, let's play the mid game where most of these hyperscalers, they still have a decent enough early game that they can get through 6, get a first item, and be okay. And they have the quote unquote power troughs that we talk about so much, especially with champions like Caitlyn, where they dip in their power and as they're going through that 8 to 12, 8 to 13 range, where it's a little bit more of a struggle for them to try to either find the objectives or find the team fights that they want, and that's it's really cool to me to hear somebody say, no, let's play that mid game where we're strongest, after 6 and before 13, where we can get 1 to 2 items, have our biggest power spikes, and smash team fights, and then we can win from there because they're still not strong enough to make it to where they can outlast us in team fights or outscale us. And so hearing that mindset, it's just something else to let people know that there's definitely way more than one way to play League of Legends. There's way more than a few ways to try to beat certain team comps, and you don't have to handshake late game scaling and then go to 40 minutes and have one team fight that secures the game. You don't have to try to snowball out an early lead. You can say, we'll kind of handshake the first few levels, but then we'll start to get stronger and we can win this mid game.
Yeah, like the thing is as well with when I say like a mid game team comp, right? Like I would consider a champion like Syndra a mid game champion, right? Or Lucian. Like these are really strong mid game champions. And they're also champions with really potent and powerful laning phases as well. So if you have champions like this that are really strong in the mid game, they're probably just going to be stronger early than the scaling champ anyway. So you're probably still going to win early game. You're still going to be able to stack Drake. You're still going to be able to get Rift and everything. But you won't the game won't be over if you lose a kill, if you lose like a team fight or a kill or something.
Right.
You're not on such a short clock. The way these hard early games like teams kind of play. So.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Just looking at these two squads, so Indiana University, the way they played these games was very slow in the early game. They did not get off to any sort of quick start, and they really relied on the opposing squad to make mistakes, and that is how they got their advantages. They were a very reactionary team, and this is something that we kind of talked about a little bit on the analyst desk for the first week of the Excellency coverage of Risen, which is it is not bad to be a reactionary team if you react in a really solid way. And that is how Indiana University handled Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse, they had terrible vision. They would engage into fights, and when they didn't know, they had no setup at all. They would try to set up or they wouldn't set up for objectives. They just kind of go for it, and then they would find themselves in a really, really bad spot in these games where it was like, all right, well, let's try to fight this out. It's now or never. And if we don't get it now, we're just going to lose the game straight up. And then they take those fights. And this happened game 1 and game 2. They just lost the final fight because they were 8,000 gold behind a scaling composition. And yeah, that's how this one went 2-0 over to Indiana University. So I really am excited to see how the Manitoba Bisons face into IU, right? And world class, if they can clean up their act a little bit, I think that this Division 1 is a division to keep our eyes on and see how they progress throughout the season, because I think this one might be a little bit closer than so far the results kind of are saying. So, but all right. Let's go ahead. Let's move this show along and let's get into the Division 2.
We started out Division 2 with Aqualix taking on Striking Vipers. And I mean, I know you've been watching a lot more tape than I have. And Aqualix taking that 2-0 to get themselves on top with Glaive Amethyst, but technically in first because of tiebreakers and because they're going 2-0 instead of 2-1. So Aqualix getting themselves off to a good start.
Oh, absolutely. And let's dive into this game really quick. So I'm going to say this right now. For me, Aqualix looks to be the best team in the league. Nobody that I watch team fights as well as these guys do. They know their limits. They know, what to do when they're fighting. They know how to set up for objectives, and they are really, really good at forcing opposing teams into bad situations. And that's exactly what happened to the Striking Vipers. They kept getting out macroed, and then they would jump into these team fights and get out microed. So Nano, I'm going to throw it over to you again. And I want to get into a little bit of a conversation about this. If you're going up against a squad with such good macro, who has such good setup, what is your mentality for trying to deal with that?
So you're saying just like a team like Aqualix, who's like has pretty good setup, pretty good macro, just in general.
Right.
I necessarily wouldn't have a direct plan to deal with that. Mainly when it comes to series and stuff, and I fully expect to play Aqualix in the finals, right? So
Okay.
it's already something that that I'm looking forward to. But I think in an extended series, it's really going to be drafts that enable both teams. Teams like Aqualix probably have a well-suited system that they play in, right? I don't think they're necessarily a new team to each other, just in general. They played in UCL, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And they did pretty well there. So they're not necessarily a new team with each other. And most teams like this, especially in this ELO bracket, have a set way of thinking of the game. So I think if you can scout well, and many teams do not scout well, but if you can scout well and prepare for your opponent, and as long as your team's solid themselves, I think you have a very good chance of winning. So
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Speaking of scouting, one thing I do want to say about Aqualix, as far as I can see, they have one potential issue, which is that they don't give their top laner any help at whatsoever. And honestly, like I think that the whole squad is really good, but I would call Wavesix, which is the top laner for Aqualix, he's more of a role player than a carry. I don't know if he can carry, but I'm just saying from what I saw, it just seems like he's there because they need someone in the top lane. He's not going to feed, he's not going to carry, he's just going to do his job. And I think that there might be some ways for some of these other squads to get in there on that guy and really, really get an advantage for themselves.
Yeah, I do think it's because a lot that's just kind of the current state of top lane as well, right?
Right.
That's just what top lane is in general. For our team, right? I guess, and using us as like a comparison into Aqualix, we do have a pretty strong top side of the map. So if that's true, that again, that's a pretty good scenario for us. But I do think having a weak side top laner isn't necessarily that big of a weakness, and I don't think it's something many teams, especially in this reload bracket, can punish. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead, Joker.
Even if we look at a professional League of Legends player, or like the top end of amateur, in even going into like LCS, LCK, LEC, weak side top lane is kind of the meta right now. I mean, you're seeing a lot of like Shen coming out, a lot of Maokai, some Gangplank, things that can play that weak side and allow the jungler to play around the mid and bot lane where the dragons are more contested. Dragon is the dragon stacking and getting those Drake buffs are so much more of a crucial buff and a crucial play for most teams than trying to go for Baron.
Right.
Simply because it's just Baron. I mean, while it still provides everything that it has in the past, the Drake stacking and the Drake buff that you get for getting that fourth Drake just is turning the game on its head and really allowing you to control team fights how you want with the specific Drakes that you get. And it just seems like most teams are starting to put more emphasis into stacking those Drakes, playing around that bottom side, making sure that they can get that rolling and try to get that fourth Drake as quick as they can, which leaves top laners on an island, which is why you get these weak side top laners who play, the Shens, the Maokais, the Gangplanks, that will just stay safe, farm up, and be very utility focused going into the fights and allow playing around the team in that regard. And I think that you're starting to see it come down the ELO brackets a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch on some of those things within this series. Is yeah, sure. Okay. Wavesix in the entire series went, let's see here, 3-10-9 or 3-10-10 in his series. And yet it didn't matter. Aqualix Esports looked like a monstrous team. Why? Because their bot laner in Oshawa, that dude is a monster, and they were able to move them around the map so efficiently and so effectively that they were able to pick up any objective that they wanted. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think that Aqualix is really going to be the team to look out for in this competition.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now, before we move on, though, I do just want to say one thing. Mid laner for Striking Vipers, DRXZMT. I just want to give him a shout out because he did his very best to keep them in this game. He had a really, really, really solid start in game one. Game two did not go quite as well, but I think that was more of a team mentality thing than something that ZMT himself was doing wrong. And on some carry champions like Irelia, maybe like Akali or some of these other ones, that guy, that is a player to watch out for. And I think that because of that reason, I do not want to count Striking Viper High Table out quite yet. I think that they're still a very solid squad, and I'm really excited to see how they do against some of the other teams in this division.
I think especially you touched on like the Akali and Aurelia. They both got touched in the world's patch here, but neither one of them really got touched enough to make it feel like they're not going to be able to be played at all. Akali got a 5 base damage nerf to her Q along with like a 0.05 AP scaling reduction. Like that's
Yeah.
that's the equivalent of like 20-25 damage. Yes, it means that maybe she can't clear the back line of minions as quickly, but she's still going to be played. Aurelia got some base damage buffs to her ultimate. She's still going to be strong in the right matchups, and DRX plays both Aurelia and Akali a lot. So, like you said, I don't think we should necessarily count them out, but I do see DRX being a ban target against a lot of teams if they do their preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go ahead. Let's hit the second round of Division 2. Let's get into that one. So that was the one that Excellency actually we went ahead and we streamed that one, that game, which was Mad City Outlaws facing off against Glaive Amethyst, and that was the first 2-1 series we got. So I think that that's really awesome that some of these teams are already showing to be very competitive with one another.
It was super interesting because all 3 games were fairly one-sided for the winning teams. It wasn't like a super close 2-1 where game 3 came down to like the nitty-gritty. No, it was game 1 Mad City was dominant, and then game 2 and game 3 Glaive Amethyst just came out. So Mad City changed their mid laner in game number 2. T1 Alcantos
T1 Alcantos was
the
game
series.
1. No, he was game 1.
Yeah,
he was game 1. Diff in for game 2.
That's right. They switched Mitch Diff in for game 2 when Alcantos was actually part of I would say he's a fairly big reason why Mad City won game 1.
Oh,
and they lost game 2 based off of the Mitch Diff, I guess, switching him in for Alcantos. And so they put Alcantos back in game 3, but after game 2, it just seemed like it was a mental break. Like something happened and they just fell apart. And Glaive Amethyst capitalized on it. Clonk was a rock in the top lane, and Mad, I don't know what they were doing. So game 2, Clonk gets his why did I just lose her name now?
Fiora?
No, that was the matchup he was into. It was the
Camille.
Camille, that's it. I knew it started with a C. So Clonk gets his Camille and almost hard carries that game. Like I'm gonna be honest, Clonk was on fire as Camille. He gets it again in game 3, and for whatever reason, Mad decide that they need to 4-man stack on Clonk, and Glaive noticed this. They responded by taking 4-man stacks on objectives across the map, and Mad just could not get objectives off of. They killed Clonk. He ended up going like 1-5 and something in that last game, but it didn't matter because his team responded by getting all the Drakes, getting Baron, getting inhibitors. They picked up 2 or 3 inhibitors or 2 or 3 towers off of one kill on Clonk. And as Mad City, you've got a strong team, you've got a solid team, but you cannot be taking those trades to try to pick off one and losing 3 turrets. That's just you cannot do that.
Yeah, definitely. But one small correction. So actually, game 2 and game 3, it was Clonk on the Fiora. Camille was his lane opponent.
You're right.
Yeah. But I just wanted to do that. But
yeah, no, you're right.
Speaking of Glaive's game plan, though, Vark might be the top 3 AD carry in the entire league. I mean, I'm talking across all the divisions. This guy was insane. I think Yule also in that mid lane really stepped up for this game. One small, I think, worry that I have for Glaive is I want to see how they do in something other than that split push style. In game one, they brought out a bit of a team fight style, and they did not do particularly well in that match. So we're going to really need to keep our eyes on these guys to see if they are just one of those, one trick ponies with a split centric style, or can they bring out some other strategies?
Yeah, and it's really disturbing to see a team where they will succeed in something that is very intricate, like a split push, because the
Mhm.
four stack has to know where they need to be and when they need to fight when the split pusher is doing their thing. So it's really interesting, and it's really it bothers me to see how they can be so good on the split push 4-1 style, but then struggle with the straight up team fight 5v5, which is what almost every team
Right.
should have a solid base standing in, because that's the base of League of Legends is a 5v5 team fight. So if they struggle in that, if a team can pick up a 5v5 team fight composition and continue to force fights on the four stack instead of the split pusher, and continue to force the 5v4s, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle, and that's not what I want to see from Glaive.
Yeah, definitely not. And that's something we're going to keep our eyes on. So I'm going to throw it over to Nano before we move on to Division 3 here. Nano, when you have a squad that is really, really good at one style of play, what are some things that you personally look to do to try to extend their repertoire?
Well, I mean, it really depends on like the identity of a team. I think
Right.
split pushing in general, right, especially 4-1 and or especially 1-3-1, but and 4-1 as well, is a style that you can just put time into committing to. I think that split pushing, when played correctly, is the strongest style in the game. In League, just how League is designed as a game, it's just the best style. But it's also the hardest style to pull off consistently as well, right? Um,
Okay.
so I think that if Glaive, for example, right, they have a split push style, and if they really are behind in other roles, I think of course they should definitely be scrimming and playing many team fight comps. They need to be able to play that right at the least,
Right.
like consistently. But I think if they have a strong split push identity, I think they can definitely go into multiple series and win that way. You know,
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, so then let me ask you this. So if that is going to be their style, what do you do to counter that style?
to counter. I think as a response to split pushing, right? Again, of course, you can always like just split push yourself, but
Right.
you probably just have to either play for winning lanes, right? Just in general, like
Okay.
winning individual lanes around the map, or have these type of global comps, where
Yeah.
you're all around the map in general. So I think you can either pick them off or win lanes and then stop their split push that way. So.
Got you. Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense to me. So
Mm.
with that, oh, do you have more?
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get over to Division 3. So Joker, you want to walk me through those ones real quick?
Yeah. We have, once again, it was a Soulbound Mirage taking on Glacial Esports. That was again streamed on the Risen Twitch channel, and Soulbound took that in a 2-0 series.
Yeah, I expect a lot from Glacial teams. In general, I think they're one of the better esports amateur organizations running around. And to watch their gameplay was just, it was kind of frustrating. I mean, the first thing I'm gonna say about it is their mid laner's name Kite Azur,
Okay.
blue in Spanish. Whatever.
Azul.
Okay, no, never mind. It is not blue in
Yeah, no.
Spanish.
Kite
All right,
Azure. So it
Kite
is a
Azure.
type of blue. It is,
Okay.
Right.
you were not wrong there.
All right. Well, you know what? I'll take 50%, but this guy is a rock. He's a really solid player, and therefore it gives me something to look at Glacial Esports to build on. However, they did get defeated 0-2, and I think a lot of that had to do with their bot lane. Jack Frost, at the moment, I gotta say, I think he really looked like the worst support in the league. I mean, just to be completely frank with it, he made tons of really questionable map movements. His playmaking wasn't particularly impressive. His lane play was underwhelming. I mean, it was just across the map. I just really did not see a lot of bright spots for this Glacial squad outside of that mid lane and Kite Azir.
And that's one of those things that's really interesting. They may have had that last second sub that Jack came in because Clinique is the official starting support on the roster, so they may have had some kind of last minute change or something like that to have Jack come in. Especially in a duo lane like the AD and support, having a last minute sub or having a swap in either role can really affect how that lane plays out, because it's not going to be the same synergy. It's not going to be the same style of play, because you may have a support who is more of an enchanter player, who likes playing
Right.
like the Lux, like the Morgana, Lulus, things like that, whereas you may have somebody who likes to play the engaged tanks, so a Thresh, a Leona, a Blitzcrank, something like that, where it's a different style of play. And AD carries, as an AD carry, man, you get used to playing with a certain style of support player, and then to have it flipped on its head by a swap, by a role swap or a substitution, can throw you off your game as an AD carry. So I do want to see if Glacial's gonna go back to Clinique, if there was just an issue and Clinique couldn't make it, and that's why they put Jack Frost in. I want to see what happens, because that Clinique in that series could have changed the series up completely for La Malala to be more comfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's a question of should you switch out the support. I mean, look, I'm just gonna go ahead and lampshade right here. These players are better than I'll ever be. Like, just straight off the bat, I'm never gonna be on these guys' level. But when you are in a competitive setting and you go 1-19 and 18 on support across your 2 games, I mean, that is just kind of unacceptable. I mean, you really and speaking of the enchanter versus tank engaged style, one of those games was on Nautilus and one was on Morgana. And he looked a little bit better on the Morgana than the Nautilus, but still, I mean, I don't know, it just really did not work out well for him here. And I don't want to just keep talking about Glacial, but Nano, like when you're faced with a situation where one of your players underperforms really poorly for a week, let's just go ahead and assume Jack Frost will be in next week just for the sake of this conversation. What do you do? Like, do you start looking at other options, or do you try to take a second chance on a guy and give him that second week?
We if someone's underperforming, right, especially on our team or a team that I'm running, we come into a group or team meeting as 5 and we talk about it, right? And we talk about how we can enable this player to perform the best he possibly can, right? Because if one person is playing extremely bad, either there's a huge skill difference on the team, but like most of the time when you're picking up players for a team, there shouldn't really be a huge skill difference. Something happening on the team to make him play bad, right? So either you're not enabling that player to play well, the mindset isn't right for that player. And usually going through those conversations and getting in the right place and working together to like come to a conclusion is usually the best way, to improve an individual player's placement. Yeah.
I got you. All right. Joker, do you have anything else to say on this matchup?
Not really. I want to see if Glacial can overcome this. I want to see if it's just a one-off where Jack had to sub in because of an issue with Clinique. I want to see what happens with Clinique getting back in. And I think Glacial, they're gonna be. Let me see. They're gonna be up against it's the Akuma Claymores, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. So that could give them an opportunity to try to right the ship, but it's not going to be an easy route for them, because that is our next match to talk about.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. Akuma Claymores faced off against Lost Collective. Akuma Claymores take this in a 2-1 fashion. And I have two words for you about this series. Top side. Oh my God, was this not the most top-centric match I've ever seen? First off, let's look at Akuma Claymores. talking about Revnon, this guy went 26, 11, and 26 across the 3 games. He had a massive game on Darius in game 1. That was the game that his team won, and then lost game 2 on Cho'Gath, facing off against the Urgot of Deku, who went 12, 5, and 5. And then you look at game 3. Revnon comes back on the Mordekaiser, 9, 3, and 11. It was literally whoever the better top lane player for the game was the one who took the game.
And that's, I mean, I'm kind of surprised to see Urgot start to make a resurgence. Haven't seen a lot of him because he doesn't tend to be a weak side top laner. And I think that's why we saw this top side battle, because these guys are playing these top laners that they like to fight, they like to 1v1. The Darius and the Mordekaiser, I mean, they love the 1v1s. I mean, the execution ultimate from Darius, the Death Realm from Mordekaiser, they want to get up in your face, they want to fight the entire time. And that's why this was a very top-sided affair, is because these guys just brawled all the time. And I love seeing that as a viewer, as a spectator, even as a caster. I love watching I love watching top laners just butt heads over and over and over and actually fight, and not just trade back and forth and back off at 50 HP. No, I mean, go in, fight, force out flashes, force out other summoners, and try to make things happen. Because if you can win your side, if you're still playing weak side, quote unquote, with your jungler shadowing bot side, if you can still win your half of the map in the 1v1, you're going to be putting your team so far ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's go ahead. Let's dive a little deeper into this series right here. So Akuma Claymores, I'm going to say they definitely overall look like a better team than Lost Collective. I don't think that is a really arguable fact here. And I think that the reason that is true is we talk about role players, right? If there's a top lane role player, he's a guy who does his jobs, like I kind of said for Qualix Esports. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is you need playmakers on your team. You have to have people who will actually get things done. And for Akuma Claymores, for the first 2 games, I was looking at their squad, I guess Revnon in the top lane is the only option these guys have. Well, luckily, they grabbed Lucian for little baby cutie, the mid laner, in the 3rd game, popped off, went 11, 3, and 12. So I look at Akuma Claymores, and I have a little bit of confidence in this squad because they have multiple playmakers. Looking over at Lost Collective, they only have their top laner. And when that top laner, like we saw in the series, runs into an equally, if not better, top laner, equally good, if not better, this is exactly what happens. You have to have alternate ways to victory rather than just one player.
And it's especially running up against someone like Revnon. Revnon is he's a
stud.
He's probably the strongest player on the on their roster. Yeah, it's right there, and I just keep losing it on the Claymore roster.
Well, I would say definitely in the division.
And he's one of those, like you said, stud top laners. This guy is really on fire, even in solo queue. He's been playing a lot. At least his main account here is Diamond 1. He is sitting pretty, and his matches are, he's had in 2 of his last 3 matches, he hasn't died. This is the kind of guy who will trade, will brawl, and play these kind of carry champions from the top lane. And that it's so weird, because we're in a meta of this kind of weak side top lane where there's a lot of Shens coming out. A lot of even Mordekaisers. Ornn was a big top lane pick for a while. That these top lane picks that can just function on their own a little bit, play safe, and then provide some kind of utility or support for the team. But Revnon doesn't play those.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely.
He plays the Mordekaiser, but
the man likes to fight.
Yeah. So it's very intimidating as a top laner who plays a weak side top laner, who plays, more for the team, to have to go up against somebody who's just going to get in your face the entire game.
Mhm.
And that's, I think the Claymores, they've got something there. They've got that spark to play around the top lane and to have somebody like Revnon who is just going to get in your face the entire game. It's going to throw off, I'd say, 95% of the top laners in this league. I think somebody like Clonk
Right.
for Glaive Amethyst isn't going to be as phased, but I think
Okay.
he's
Yeah.
in the sense that Clonk plays the split pushers, so
Right.
he's
But
still used to that 1v1 style of play.
I agree with you, but let's go back to Nano's point, right? He said that if you want, you focus on the laning aspects. Well, you can't really get a better laner than Revnon. I mean, the dude was a monster, and so that makes me wonder, between Glaive Amethyst and this Akuma squad, will Revnon be the difference that that they need to take the victory for the side of the Akuma Claymores? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm gonna say this right now. I think Glaive Collective has a better overall squad than Akuma Claymores.
Yeah.
But then I feel like Akuma Claymores has the perfect play style to counter that the strategy.
Yeah, usually for those type of matchups where it's like, oh, you have two really big, hard hitting tops playing against each other. What tend to happen is that both tops actually kind of become like solely irrelevant when they play against each other. Like, they kind of like cancel each other out in some cases with like picks, and it's a lot of the team like around them, like which team around them either enables their top laner better, or they have like a better bot lane or mid or jungler or something. It usually comes out with like the series win.
Yeah.
So I think it would definitely be an interesting matchup for sure.
Oh yeah, that's honestly one of my most hyped matchups for the entire season right there. And I'm going to be real with everybody. I think the winning squad is going to be which one of these mid laners has a bigger impact. Is it going to be little baby cutie? Obviously super powerful on this Lucian, and someone you need to be weary of, or Yule, who we all saw together that dude's not a joke. I mean, equally as good. So yeah, I agree with Nano, and I agree with what Joker hasn't even said yet, which is that this is one of the matches to watch.
Oh yeah. The unfortunate thing is we're not going to see it until we get into playoffs because they're not in
Right.
the same groups. But it's one of those it's one of those hype matchups that you see it happen. If you see it happen, it's going to be one of those series that's going to stand out in this league.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why I thought they were in Division 2. I just had a brain meltdown there, but okay, yeah, I know you're right. And that is a big bummer that we don't get to watch that matchup, because honestly, that's something I would be really excited to see. How do these two squads play? But we all know what time it is. It's time to talk about our man of the hours team. All right, Nano, let's go ahead. Let's get into Division 4 and let's talk about, whatever there is to talk about. But actually, before we get into that, I actually just want to talk to you about the Conviction, organization as a whole. So, would you mind just walking us through like how it was founded and where it's gone?
Okay, well, shit. All right, so as Conviction as an org was mainly founded like just kind of with a group of friends, just in general.
Okay.
And it was kind of really out of a school club for the most part, right? Where we started like playing like league tournaments and stuff, just like from our school. And then a lot of the players from our school then broke on. We started on esports org, right? Just in general. And then slowly but surely, we kept like growing different rosters in general. I gained more experience as a coach because I've kind of been around the scene a lot, right? Playing a bunch of different like teams, like Fruition, Team Eradication, a short stint with Polar Ace, and Dawn Esports. But kind of me being around and then working with my own org kind of increased me as like a coach as well. So that made us able to improve a lot faster, because I think dealing with other coaches or like working with them is really like finicky, like people just coming in and out. So because our staff is like, we all know each other in IRL, right? It's really easy to keep like a consistent thing going with the org and stuff, and be able to venture into different games and stuff over time. So and then basically with our league roster, we kept upgrading our roster over time. A while back, we were in the I don't know if you guys remember ABL World Championship. We did pretty well in that, but we weren't able to win it in Game 5 and such. We played a bunch in Nightfall, the Nightfall League. Then we went after some time upgrading our roster. We played in Phoenix Rising, their one challenger league, and won the league. So
nice.
that was pretty exciting. Winning Phoenix Rising. And then after that, with our main challenger roster, we went into the scouting round circuit and did extremely well in that, in our standards, taking a bunch of players who were considered to be lower rated in their, compared to the top players. And we were able to beat everyone, right? From 100 Thieves to Anu to Maryville, we beat everyone, right? It sucks that we weren't able to make the scouting round circuit playoffs because only the top 8 teams make it, and we were 9th. Mainly because Polar Ace decided to lose, and whatever, right? I'm still bitter about it, but hey, their coaching staff DM'd me personally saying, "Sorry, dude, we had the worst match of our lives." So they lost to some random team that took our spot. But we were pretty hyped up. We were definitely ready to go into that and perform pretty well. But that it ended unfortunately, and it kind of sucks. But we decided to kind of look for other options and stuff with that roster, take a break with it and such, because there's not really too much of an emphasis to host the challenger roster at this current season, right? There's no real big incentive for that. So what I decided to do was, okay, I'd rather go out and find players that I think are extremely talented in this high diamond range, and be able to see how many of them can progress to being much higher and being a better player, to kind of take our org back to that level for next season, which is going to be a really exciting season when it comes to amateur, because of what Riot's plans are. So I think starting now with lower rated players, younger players, and moving there is something that's really, really important for CNB. All right,
I just want to say that's super cool.
That's awesome, dude.
On a personal level too, because I ran an org of my own for some time, and that was kind of my goal as well, was to try to find players who were just almost at that level and needed that little bit of guidance, that little bit of push, that little bit of support. And there's not a lot of amateur organizations willing to do that. A lot of amateur orgs, they just want to get in at the the highest level they can and not worry about building a roster, building a name. But seeing that somebody is willing to go back to those roots of building up the roster, building up the chemistry, and working as a group in a maybe not as high ranked league, but still something that is prestigious, that is known, that is people watch, and then build up and build up and build up. That is really awesome in my book.
Yeah, because I have experience building a lot of straight challenger rosters, right? We've done quite a few, and recruiting players at that level comes with a bit of difficulty when it comes to changing players and finding people who are adaptable, right? If someone's been doing something and reached the highest rank doing something, and you come and tell them that they're wrong, it's really a culture shock. It's really a shock to them, right? And I think probably players in this rating are much more flexible and willing to explore their own gameplay and explore League a lot more. And I think even if this roster isn't the exact roster that will make it there, constantly building upon it and hopefully taking players from this roster there, I think is a much better system to actually just succeed when we're back at the Skyrim circuit, back competing, and then be able to beat Anu Esports when we should have beat them, and they snuck away from us like slimy snakes and went into the circuit.
Yeah. Honestly, when you were telling the story the first time around, I really felt like it was a documentary, and that was the part we needed the sad piano music to come in. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But all right. Well, honestly, huge congratulations to you for building an organization like Conviction. It's a very impressive thing to do, and we give you the highest respect for it. So yeah, incredible job with that. For the record, Joker's owned I have not All I do is cast, baby. That's the
Yeah,
only it's the only job for me. But let's go ahead. Let's get into the final series that we have available to us. As Akuma Halberds and Omega Gaming Silence have not actually played yet. We don't have their VODs to review, and so we can't really talk about them. But we do have Conviction versus Quintus Esports, and it wasn't very helpful. I'm gonna be honest. I have never seen a team just so completely get rolled over. And as much as I want to give respect to Conviction because they look like a good team, I really can't because they played against this team here, and they were an all-you-could-eat buffet, is what I'll say about them. Like any mistake that you can really make, it looked like they were trying to do a checklist of mistakes. You know what I mean? Like they were trying to hit every incorrect play that they possibly could. And what I do have to say about Conviction, you let it happen. Like, I'll give you credit for that. But so yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this series. Nano, what do you think?
Yeah, so we came in thinking Quintus or Quintus, whatever.
Aquinas.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Right.
We came in looking at them as they're probably maybe one of the better teams in our group compared to us. The other two teams didn't really stand out too much to us, but we'll see when we play against them.
Right.
In the match, we did take it pretty seriously, just trying to make sure we win in draft and in all phases of the game. But we take regular season matches like they're scrims for us. We're still working on certain things. We're always for like our match there, we were really big on working communication and making sure everyone was aware of what each other are doing.
Okay.
The same as our scrim the day before, the same as the week's focus for that week. The match is just a representation of how well we're doing on that front. So we're really still building as a team and not really worried about the group stage too much. So
yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like you have a ton of confidence.
Is that you saying that you're gonna make it out of group stage 6-0 and move on to playoffs without having dropped a game?
No.
Or okay. I mean,
no.
Wait.
Can
you say that?
No, I'm saying I won't say that. I say we probably won't lose a Baron or third Drake this group stage.
Wow.
Okay. That's some hype. Do you have a bet you're willing to place on that?
Okay. I don't know about that. I can easily bet on 6-0. I think 6-0 should be pretty straightforward. But so I think that's genuinely the gap between us and these teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know if you guys mind if I talk about kind of the roster.
Sure, absolutely.
These players. I think that we have the top 2 mid laners in the tournament. Both our mid and our AD carry are mid lane players. Because I'm a believer that mid laners are just better at the game than AD carries. So I made an effort to go out and find a mid laner who would be able to play AD. I think we can play both players in either roles, and they'd probably be at least top 3 or 2 in their role in this tournament quite easily. So I think we come out as a team that, even though you saw that series, you probably haven't even seen a hair of what we're capable of in draft and just in general. But it really depends on how much we're willing to show right now. But when it comes to flexibility and being able to move things, we can flex champions that teams wouldn't even consider flexing. And that makes us pretty dangerous in the draft phase, I think, as well. So I think we have the best top in the tournament as well. Revnon did come around and tried out for our team before joining his team. He did play a game or so. we thought our top laner was better, so we went with him. So I'm pretty confident in that matchup as well. Even though it didn't look like it too much in our matchup, in our match. So,
okay, so just to be completely transparent with you, it's hard to look really, really good against a team that was playing that bad, because really all you have to do is just sit there and play the game, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do anything creative.
We'll just take it, you know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like you just sit there, you just lay back on your bed and just let them keep running at you.
For sure,
So-
right? So I think, I don't know about these other two teams in our group, but I think we'll really be like, I think our medal will really be tested against the other teams, the top teams in the other groups.
Sure.
And then we'll really see, like, you know, Division 1 teams, teams like Aqualix, teams like, you know, Akuma Clayboards, you know, Soulbound, right? I think these teams will really show like how good we are, if we deserve to win the league or not. But so far, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and I am excited to see how your team continues to perform throughout their throughout the regular season. But I do actually have a little bit of a concern in Akuma Halberds.
Okay.
I think that's a squad. They look like I haven't now. Okay, so here's the issue. I haven't actually seen them play, but just looking at the player names, they do inspire a little bit of confidence in me. And so if I don't know if they're better than you, because I haven't seen it yet.
Yes.
But I'm going to be really interested to see how that matchup goes specifically. I think that this is a 2-horse race between your team and Akuma Halberds.
For sure. Yeah, and we play them on Monday, right? So, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. And that's another one. Like you send me those VODs because I want to see that.
Yeah, it sucks that we don't have any streamed matches soon. I think on like the list of the matches that are going to be streamed by like Risen or XL and C. So like we'll probably just go under the radar for a bit some time until playoffs, I guess. But yeah, we'll just have to see what happens later in this season.
Yeah, that's
for sure.
That's a week 3 matchup. There's the Halberds and Conviction.
Yeah.
So that is gonna definitely be one that I wish we could stream, because I know that would be probably one of the hypest group stage matchups that we'd probably see, because I would bet that it's gonna be that it could be a semifinal like rematch or semifinal preview match, you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of match.
Yeah.
So all right, well, unfortunately, like we said before, we do not have Akuma Halberds playing against Omega Gaming Silence, so we will not be able to go ahead and review that series. Now, like I do predict Akuma Halberds to take that series whenever it does play. I think Joker said it would play the day after week 2's games.
Yeah, if everything goes according to plan, no plan really survives first encounter. But so far, yes, it seems like Akuma Halberds and Omega Gaming Silence will be playing their week 1 match the day after their week 2 match. Just how things kind of worked out scheduling. Yeah.
All right.
We're playing Omega Gaming Silence, I think, next, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. Well, that's going to go ahead and conclude the analysis proportion of this podcast. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move to our next segment where everyone gets to flame me and yell at me for being wrong. This is going to be the power ranking segment where we talk about each one of these teams within their division. I'm going to give them a ranking within their own squad, and then we're going to do a tier list with each group, or not each group, sorry, each tier, and it goes S through F. So let's go ahead. Let's get right into this. So let's talk about Division 1. All right.
Sorry, is the thing like anywhere? Like is there?
No. We're gonna do that in post.
Or do you just have it? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna. I really need to start putting this stuff online. I'm just such a pen and paper guy.
Yeah, for sure.
That I just like to write it down. I can hold it up to my webcam if you want.
Good, dude, we're good.
I'm typing it out too, so we'll have it.
Yeah,
multiple ways.
All right, so I'm just gonna go over Division One at first. So it's Manitoba Bisons, Indiana University, Dark Pulse, and World Class Esports.
Mhm.
So these are my rankings. I want you guys to discuss them after I say them. So I'm going to say this. The top two squads in number 1 and 2 in this group are Manitoba Bisons, number 1, and Indiana University, number 2. And I really think, depending on, you know, how you look at those teams, that could go either way. I think that Indiana University could take Manitoba Bisons about 45% of the time. And that is close enough to where I could see that going either way. I think Dark Pulse is my third team, and World Class Esports, just judging off how they played week one with no prior, there's no past influence going on. I have them as my number 4 squad.
So Manitoba 1, IU 2, Dark Pulse 3, World Class 4.
Yes, sir.
I don't, based off of the results that we've gotten and what we've discussed, I don't really see much of a difference. I'm trying not to be the homer because I am from Indiana. I have family who graduated from IU. Like Hoosier Crimson runs it through my veins. So I'm trying not to be a homer, but I can at least see that how Manitoba IU could be a very close 1 and 2.
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with, based off of super hot takes from week one.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Super conclusive.
Mhm.
All right,
I have
Nano,
a bold prediction here.
all right, go ahead.
World Class will top this group.
Hey, judging
right.
from what you've said about them, I would love to see it. I'm going to tell you what I didn't see. I didn't see anything in week one. So hopefully, yeah, as this season progresses, World Class Esports can increase in the rankings and in the tier list that I have set up.
Mm.
So, all right. Well, do you guys have any final thoughts, or do you want to move straight to Division 2?
I think that's fair.
Let's go to D2.
All right. Now, D2, we have Aqualix Esports, Amethyst Glaive, Striking Viper High Table, and Mad City Outlaws. All right. I think that this is a kind of tough group to judge, because I think Aqualix Esports is the clear cut number 1. And I think if you argue that, you're either very optimistic or a goofball, is the word choice I'm going to go with. I think that Amethyst Glaive, Striking Viper High Table, and Mad City Outlaws any given week on these squads, but that is the order I have them in. Number 2, Amethyst Glaive. I think that most of the time they will beat the other 2 teams, and I predict that they will be the second squad out of this group. Striking Viper High Table, based off of an okay fight against Aqualix Esports, with how rated I do put Aqualix Esports, the fight that SVHT was able to give off was impressive. And then Mad City Outlaws, I do have at that number 4 spot, but like I said, I wouldn't be remotely surprised if any of those 3 teams got out of this group.
Mhm.
I mean, based off of just the week one, results based analysis, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I would probably I put Mad City above Striking Vipers.
Sure.
Because I think Mad, they showed glimpses of brilliance in their series. They took that first game off of Glaive. And I think that if they can shore up a few things, especially in their jungle mid, how the jungle mid synergy works and how the junglers play around the map, I think Mad City have the opportunity to unseat Glaive for number 2 and make it out. But I would put Glaive 2, Mad City 3, Striking Vipers High Table 4th.
Sure, and I think that's completely reasonable. The only reason I have Striking Viper above Mad City is purely based off that mid laner in DRX ZMT. This guy is an animal, and I'm telling you that right now. And I'm going to say that ZMT is going to get leads over Mad City. I think that the player difference enough the where I have faith in this man to get those early starts. And you saw in those games when Mad City got put behind, they stayed behind.
I
They
I want to say part of that though from Mad City is their jungle play.
right, sure.
Is how how their jungler interacted with the rest of the map. Because it wasn't actually Alcantos. Alcantos is listed as their jungle, but it was they had I believe it was
Oh, I have it. 1 second.
I believe it was actually Mouse Dixie who was
Yeah,
in the
Mouse
jungle.
Dixie.
Yeah, and he played fairly well in game 1, but in games 2 and 3
Yeah.
he looked lost.
No,
And
I will agree with you on that.
I think that's where the key lies for me is if Mouse Dixie, if they go with their original lineup of Alcantos in the jungle, Mitch Diff in mid, I think that's a stronger lineup for them, and I think that's where they've got the striking shot at Glaive Amethyst to take 2. But if they have if they still have Mouse Dixie in the jungle, they're very very volatile because he plays aggressive without vision, and that's
Yeah,
where they're gonna fall apart.
absolutely. Nano, do you have any thoughts on this?
That's not too much. I personally think that, like, looking at the series between Mad and Glaive, I think Mad can definitely in the second round get out of this group.
Yeah, I can
I-
see it.
Yeah, I think that I slightly favor them to get out just from like pre-season rankings, right? But
Sure.
I think it's definitely one of those two teams, either Glaive or Mad, that will probably get out. Striking, I think, are like they have a pretty strong mid, but I don't know if they will be able to win enough games to get out of the group. You know, like
Yeah.
like third or something in a scenario, but like I don't know if they'll
Mhm.
win enough games against these teams to get out of the group. But we'll see.
I'm gonna be super excited because that's the group I'm the least sure about. Just to be transparent, I'm positive Aqualix is getting out. I'd be willing to bet on that one.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say I am 90% sure it'll be as the first seed. So I think that, like I said, you have to be a mad lad to argue with that. But yeah, like I said, I think any of the 3 other teams could get out of this group. And you talk about that group of life scenario. I think that the Division 2 is definitely going to be the group of life, at least in this squad, because I think every other group has a solid top 2 that are going to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's move our attention to Division 3. Quick rundown: Soulbound Mirage, Akuma Claymores, Lost Collective, and Esports. And this one's it breaks my heart a little bit to say. I only have 1 week of knowledge, and I fully expect Glacial Esports to get their act together, but they have to be the number 4 seed, the 4th place team after this week 1 alone. I think that between the support, maybe when they bring in the starting support, that's gonna make the difference. But that was not the only issue. They had not great synergy. I think that a lot of their comms just straight up there. And while sure, their mid laner was a solid player, as a team, they really have a big issue of just not setting up for objectives and overextending in fights. And I think that is going to spell their disaster. Number 3, Lost Collective. Just not because I think they're bad per se, but just because I think the other 2 teams are straight up better. Akuma Claymores are going to be my number 2, with Soulbound Mirage coming in at number 1.
I don't think I necessarily completely disagree. I think there could be an argument to be made for the Claymores over Soulbound Mirage.
Sure, yeah.
But I think at that point, between these 2 teams, when we haven't seen them face off, I think you're kind of splitting hairs as to
Right.
who would be number 1, number 2. But I think, I think you could make the argument that the Claymores could be first, excuse me, and Soulbound could be second. And I think you're right in that Glacial will probably try to get their act together, but it's going to be so hard when you're already down a game to try to come back against teams that have picked up their first win and are looking as solid as Soulbound Mirage and the Akuma Claymores. I could see them finishing third, like a game out of breaking through. But I don't think they're gonna make it.
I mean, you only have 6 games, and they've already lost the first one. You only have you have 3-3 might not be good enough when you start from behind, because you're
Yeah,
already in that
Yeah.
seat back. So you probably need to pick up 4 out of your next 5 games to get through, and that's not easy.
I think you have to, especially in, I think, Group 3 and Group 4. I think you have to go 4-2 in order to make it out. I
Mhm.
don't think a 3-3 would be necessarily good enough. I think you're knocking at the door of getting third place if you're three
Right.
and three and getting that first loss. It's a it's a mental boom, and big, and it's hard to come back to say, all right, yeah, we lost our first one, but we could pick it up. We got another shot against them later on, but that's going to be tough.
Yeah, definitely. Nano, do you have any thoughts on this group?
Um, I think that I mostly agree with the standings. I have a bit more confidence that Soulbound will probably come out first in this group because I don't think Akuma. I don't know if Akuma's top can just win them this group.
Hmm.
Like single handedly. Um, He's pretty good for sure, but like I think Soulbound probably will be a bit more consistent around the map. Just like, in general as a team. So
Yeah.
they could probably just figure something out to deal with top lane, and I think they can win this group. So
All right. All right. So we have Division 4 still to go, but since I haven't seen 2 of the teams play, it's really hard to give
same.
like a smally accurate prediction on this. I'm gonna try, but this is gonna be the most just shooting in the dark prediction of all time. So I do think that the 2 teams getting out are gonna be Conviction, and I think it's gonna be Akuma Halberds. Um, I think the 2 teams left behind, I I I I'm honestly praying that if assuming Aquinas doesn't get better, I pray that they're the 4th seed because Omega Silence, while I did look at their roster to get a bit of an idea how they look, oh man, I hope they're better. At least that they're performing better than what I saw out of AE.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I think with having inconclusive evidence
right, yeah,
as to the remaining teams, like I think, yeah, you could go with this very like heavy on the like, this is like, like beta testing kind of thing, where you could say Conviction. I personally, I'd probably go Conviction, Akuma, Halberds, then Omega Gaming, Silence, and Aquinas, like one,
oh,
two,
so
three,
we're
four.
yeah, we're completely in agreement then
Yeah,
for
but it
something we haven't seen.
exactly. It's very much like, this is like, I'm not like making any guarantees. I'm not,
Yeah,
absolutely saying this is how it is, because we just don't have enough evidence. We can look at the names, we can look at, solo queue, we can hear scrim rumors, but we don't have any actually hard conclusive evidence between the game between the Akuma Halberds and Omega Gaming Silence. We just don't know.
yeah. What about you, Nano? You got a feeling about now I'm assuming that since you said 6-0, you think you guys are getting out first. Who do you think is gonna get out second?
Um, I don't know. I think um, Aquinas won't do as badly as you guys may think. Um, like from that, from like draft, like from drafting against them and like coaching against them. I
Hmm.
think maybe I have a little bit of a different opinion than maybe you guys do, like just watching the game. But I think they weren't like the best team in the world. But I think there were certain things that we did in draft that made it hard for them to come out with winning drafts. Um, and I I think they did try to make things happen in their games, right? For the most
Yeah,
part, they were trying a lot of things, and it seemed like just a lot of the stuff that they did just didn't work out. I maybe against the other teams in this group they can, so I
right.
wouldn't count them out completely, but I wouldn't say they'll probably get out of the group. The other two teams, I just don't know anything about them, so I just can't comment.
Yeah, I understand. Don't want to be wrong, but I do. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
go ahead and give out my tier list now. We're gonna run through this pretty quick so we don't run too long on time because we still have our predictions to do.
Yeah.
And then we will call it a wrap. But before that, let's hit our tier list. So sitting by themselves in the S tier, I'm kind of fanboying over them. So I do put Aqualix Esports as that number one team. I have them alone in the S ranking. So and that basically S tier just says I think that they are a little bit, if not moderately, above every other team here. I'm sure Nano will have some thoughts about that.
We'll see. Yeah, but we can't change that until we play them, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
or
of
maybe
course.
more games are seen, or whatever. But so
Joker, do you have any thoughts or perhaps any other teams you would want in that top tier?
Honestly, not really. I mean, like,
Mhm.
I would love to put Conviction up there just based off of how well that they played, but uh I think it's still a little bit too early. I want to see more out of Conviction, and I want, like, they're high A tier for me, but like I want to see that little bit of push to the S tier.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree with you. Actually, Conviction is sitting at my number 2 squad overall. I mean, it's really hard to put them anywhere just because of regardless of whether or not that's what we should expect to see for the rest of the season. Just what we saw out of Aquinas just made it kind of a null point to really predict how skilled Conviction are. But they did win their game in resounding fashion, so there's always that. Now let's go to A tier. This is my biggest tier because I think that there's a lot of teams that can take games off of each other in any situation. So I have Conviction, the Akuma Halberds. I personally rank them highly until I see otherwise. Amethyst Glaive, Indiana University, Manitoba Bisons, and Soulbound Mirage.
okay.
What do you
Yeah.
think, Joker?
I honestly don't see uh I don't see much difference, honestly. And again, we're basing this off of, one game. So we're basing this off of the fact that we've seen, these teams in action once. But I would agree. I think Dark Pulse could be a could potentially be a contender in the series if they later on in the season if they can get their act together. I think as it stands right now, I don't think they're A tier, but I think they can get there.
Oh, you are
Uh,
not going to like where I have them.
oh no, I can imagine where you have them, and I would probably agree.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Dark Pulse, in my opinion, will decide the group. Like, I think the team that loses to Dark Pulse, or like loses the most games to
Yeah.
Dark Pulse, will probably not make it out. So I think they'll be like they'll be shifty in this group. Like I
The
can see,
classic wild card at Worlds.
yeah, exactly. I think they're that team. But they're
Yeah.
not
yeah,
that bad,
yeah.
But I feel like they'll probably win against someone, and it'll be really bad for them. So
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's hop down to B tier. Now, things start getting a little bit more stretched out at this point. B tier, I have the Akuma Claymores, Striking Viper High Table, and Mad City Outlaws.
okay.
See, I could see an argument for Mad City being A tier, but the way that they lost their two games,
Right.
I think keeps them down from that A tier. I think if they win 2-0, 2-1 in the same fashion that they won game number one, I would put them in the A tier. But because of how hard they lost games 2 and 3, I
Right.
think I would agree in putting them at the bottom of the B tier. They're one of those teams where, like, if they strike gold, it's the Western Gold Rush.
Yeah.
But
On
but
a good day, they could beat anyone.
yeah,
Mhm.
but the problem is how many good days do they have?
Yeah. No, consistency matters way too much in a league with this much competition. So,
Mhm.
yeah, because of that, they are going to be my bottom B tier team below Striking Viper High Table. And I know that, there's a lot of disagreement on that in this little trio we have right now. But I just have a little bit more faith in SVHT to be that, even if at a top level they're not as good. I expect them to perform at a higher level, just more frequently.
We're gonna get to at least see that because they match up against each other here in week number 2, and that's gonna be
Oh
an
yeah,
early sign of will Mad be consistent or will Striking Viper be able to take over and use their base? Is their base higher than the Mad high?
yeah, no, definitely. And I don't know, Nano, do you have any thoughts on that tier?
Um, I mean, I think the series between Mad and Glaive, right, again, is really interesting. I think like if that series was a best of 5, I think that's a game 5 series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I bet every game would be a stomp the entire way there.
Exactly. So again, it would be that type of series, but I think really on like another day, on like a Tuesday, Mad wins that, that series. So I would put these two teams much closer.
Oh yeah, I mean, personally, I know Joker said Mad is at the bottom of B tier. I personally have them at the top, or maybe like the middle to the top of B tier, and I have Amethyst Glaive as my worst team in A tier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's fair. Man.
So, okay, let's go ahead. Let's run down to C tier. Now, unfortunately, this is where no one wants to be. I do have 2 squads here, though. Not the worst squad. There's still 4 teams in D and F tier. Yeah, we're going down to F tier. But
Oh boy.
yeah, well, some of these teams looked real rough. But before we get there, based off of nothing, except for just the pure roster talent and what I've seen from the squads below them, I have Omega Silence in C tier, and I have Lost Collective.
Okay.
And I know we're way far down the list here, but the reason these guys are this far, or at least Lost Collective, Omega Silence, I don't know. I have zero idea. I just need to see more. But just purely roster strength and what I've seen from the other squads, this is where I predict they end up. Lost Collective, I just don't see them beating any team above them.
That's interesting because I think they could have had the chance to take down Akuma Claymores. And I think when that series gets its run back, and that's actually gonna be let's see here because I'm trying to find the Akuma Claymores and where the run back is, and that's in week 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think given the growth of how teams will move throughout the season, how the meta may develop, because we're coming into week 2 on a new patch, so most likely we'll come into week 4 on another new patch. Seeing how the Lost Collective can learn these patches and whether or not the meta will suit them, I think there's the opportunity when they get the run back that they may take the 2-1. But again, that's going to be like, we'll have to see how they evolve and how they learn the meta as it
Right.
grows based off of each patch. But I don't want to necessarily say they can't beat any team above them. I think I'd say like it's a 80-20 split on whether they do or whether they don't beat the teams ahead of them or they do. I think there's the opportunity, but I don't know if it's
I'll have to see
always
it.
there. Yeah,
I'll have to see it to believe it.
It's one of those where I think it can happen. I don't see it happening, but it's one of those like logically, yeah, they the way that they played the Claymores, there's the opportunity if they can grow and expand on what they did right. They have the ability to beat those teams ahead of them.
All right. Well, we'll have to see it, but let's go. I'm gonna knock out D tier and F tier together. So D tier is only one team, Esports, and the reason why is because I can't see them beating anybody above them purely based off of the week 1 performance. If they do that again, I think D tier is where they belong. The
Which
3
one?
teams I do think Glacial Esports.
Glacial. Okay, you went robotic for like a half second.
Oh, sorry about that. Now the 3 teams I do think Glacial could beat, and this is the only reason why these 3 teams are in F tier, is Dark Pulse based off week 1, Quintus Esports or Aquinas or whatever based off week 1, and World Class Esports. And I know Nano has told me every single one of these squads are competitive, so I might be dead wrong on this one.
I mean, if you're going results-based analysis, I don't necessarily disagree, but
Yeah.
I think with the talent,
Mhm.
the rosters that they have, I mean, you could make the argument that there's no F tier teams, 2 D tier teams, and 4 C tier teams. I think you could make the argument that Dark Pulse and World Class could be C tier based off of the rosters that they have. We did not see those rosters come to fruition.
Mhm.
We did not see them, successful. But the fact that they still have very strong play, they still have good players. They just need to gel. I think you could knock them up to C. uh you can make that argument. And then Aquinas, I think I think they ran into the brick wall known as conviction in week one.
Yeah.
uh and that's gonna make any team not look good. I think I think they could be competitive in group 4. I don't think they're gonna. I think they'll make a lot of 2-1 series and they may sneak a victory, but I don't think they're gonna do more than 1-5. But
Yeah.
I could see the being a lot of 2-1 losses, and that
Yeah.
could be that could make or break some tiebreakers during group 4. And I would say you could make the argument to bump Aquinas up to D.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that is our tier list. And you know what? I'm ready for all the heat that I can take. So bring it on, baby. But now we have one last segment before we are going to call it a night. So we're gonna try to make it choppy because I know we've been going for a long time now. Which is just our predictions for week 2. So let's 30 seconds or less. Let's talk about each one of these matchups. So Manitoba Bisons facing off against Dark Pulse. I have 2-0. Manitoba. Joker?
Uh,
I don't disagree with that.
All right, Nano, what do you think?
2-1.
2-1. All right, so we do agree that Manitoba is going to win. The question is, can Dark Pulse pick up a game? Second off, we do have World Class Esports facing off against Indiana University, and I once again have a 2-0 for Indiana University.
I think it's a 2-1 for IU. I think World Class will start to find something. I think they may take a game 2, but I think IU goes 2-1.
All right.
I think World Class 2-0s.
Ooh.
All right.
All right, Nano.
There's some spice.
All right, showing off the pistol there. So
And that will be streamed on the Excellency Esports channel.
Well, I'll see
yeah,
live.
I'll get to be wrong live, baby. All right. Moving on, we do have Glaive Amethyst facing off against Aqualix Esports, and I have Aqualix winning that 2-1.
I concur 2-1.
I'm gonna say it's probably Aqualix 2-1. In my head, in my heart, I think Glaive could sneak out a 2-1.
In my head, it's Glaive losing 1-2. In my heart, it's Aqualix 2-0.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now we have Striking Vipers High Table facing off against Mad City Outlaws. I think this is where we're all going to disagree. I have Striking Viper winning 2-1.
I have Mad City 2-1.
This is another one of those where I feel like it could go either way based on just how we've broken down these two teams.
This is the closest match in my opinion.
I think Striking Vipers are going to go 2-1, but I would not be surprised to see Mad City take it 2-1. But
or even 2-0.
Yeah.
But all right, moving on down the line, Soulbound and Lost Collective. Now, I think Lost Collective is going to get wiped here, 2-0 by Soulbound.
I agree.
Yeah, I can. I think. Yeah, I'm gonna say Soulbound 2-0. Part of me wanted to say maybe Lost Collective will sneak one, but I think it's just Soulbound 2-0.
All right, look, if Soulbound picks up a win here, I consider that an upset. Just for the series.
You mean Lost Collective picks up a win?
I'm sorry. Yeah. You're right. If Lost Collective picks up a win, then that is a shocker to me. But I don't know. We'll see. It's possible. All right. Moving on. AKC facing off against Glacial, where I have Akuma winning 2-0. Akuma Claymores, that is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I say 2-1.
All right, and then let's keep her running here. So then we have Quintus Esports going against Akuma Halberds, and this time I think the Akuma Halberd squad's going to take it. Big day for Akuma, 2-0.
What was the last match? Sorry, I must have heard.
No, it's all good. Quintus Esports facing off against Akuma Halberds.
And then this one, they're playing both their matches, right?
Yeah, they're
okay.
they're playing both of them. Yeah.
I was like, what's going on? No, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, Halberd. I think Halberd's 2-0, and even against Omega Gaming, it's not going to be streamed, but I think that's going to be a 2-1 against Omega.
Yeah, I would agree. I would actually give them the 2-0 over Omega, but yeah, we'll find out. And you know, when we get to our well, actually, let me get through this first. So, finally, Omega Gaming Silence facing off against Conviction, and I predict a 2-0 for Conviction.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and that is going to do it for our predictions. But the one thing I do want to say is whatever I get wrong, I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong. And I will be the first one to tell you guys all the things I got wrong and brag about all the things that we got right when we do get around to next week's podcast. Joker, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna throw it over to you to close this bad boy out.
I mean, there's not much else to say. So we will have 2 matches being streamed once again next week. We will have the World Class Esports taking on Indiana University on the Excellency Esports Twitch page. That's twitch.tv/XLNC Esports. And then we will have the Aquinas Esports taking on the Akuma Halberds over on the Risen Twitch page. And I believe that is twitch.tv/Risen Esports. I'm not 100% sure. I will remember that here in just a second. I'll remember it as soon as we go off air, I'm pretty sure. But those are going to be our stream matches here for the Risen Divine League for week number 2. Going to be some fun ones. I don't remember as far as the Excellency cast is concerned. I know I'm going to be on the analyst desk as I'll be
play-by-play
late for the game number 1. So yeah, you're going to see JuiceBoxGuy taking on the play-by-play role, which will be a blast. JuiceBox is you're in great hands with JuiceBoxGuy. Gonna say that. I'm excited to tune into that as I'm coming back from work. So that's going to be a fun one. Once again, we want to thank Nano, the coach. The coach for Conviction, coming in and joining us, providing us some of that extra insight that we as commentators, analysts, desk analysts, we don't necessarily get because we don't get that hands-on experience or working with the teams in that kind of one-on-one or one-on-5 situation. So, Nano, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure, dude. It was a pleasure to be here.
And good luck to you and your team on the rest of the season. Hopefully, we see you take that 6-0 in groups and make it onto playoffs. That would be quite a great story to move us into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I hope we get a stream game for at least one of these matches eventually.
Hey, we'll talk to Excellency about it. We still have 2 more games to show, but
week 6 banger.
Yeah, week 6 banger, baby. I do also just want to do a big shout out to Focus and Rando Joe over at the Risen organization for helping us out so much and setting up this, and also allowing us to use their logo and stuff like that. It really means a lot to me and the rest of the Excellency crew that we were allowed to go and do something that's this exciting and awesome. Also, like and subscribe, give the double J's a little bit of the love here, Joker and JuiceBoxGuy. Huge shout out to Nightclaw also for producing this. So thank you, good sir. I appreciate you. And unless there are any closing thoughts,
one more. Big shout out to our jungler for helping us keeping the mental strong and carrying our mid every single game.
And there you go. You got a coach that loves his players, and I love to see that. So I think that that's going to be all for us over here in the Excellency organization. So everybody have yourself a good night, and remember, stay excellent.
For sure.